Hey, welcome to the Kingdoms Podcast. My name is Luke and I host this with my buddy Matt Ma. And our goal is to empower you to discover how your faith impacts culture for God's kingdom. To do that, we're sitting down with different men and women from all kinds of disciplines to uncover how they, through their ambitions and vocational skill set, make a difference in the lives of those around them. And so if this is helpful to you, we'd love it if you could like it, share it, and subscribe. In the meantime, enjoy today's episode. Well, friends, thank you for being back with me, Luke Crawford, on the podcast. I'm really excited to have retired NHLer and Hall of Famer Mike Gartner with me today. Mike, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, my pleasure, Luke.
It's been sweet to get to know you and Colleen a little bit as a part of the same church family, but also just to hear and learn a little bit more of your story. And I'm excited for that today, both your professional experience, but also who you are as a follower of Jesus Christ. And I wonder, Mike, I know a lot of times people probably, when they talk to you, the first thing they think of is hockey. But I'd love for those of us who maybe don't know, for you just to give us a snapshot of what life looks like for Mike Gartner outside of hockey, outside of that limelight. Who's Mike Gartner in his work now, in his family life? What makes Mike Mike?
Well, I have been retired now for 22 years. Probably I've been retired now longer than I actually played. So I retired in 1998 after playing for 20 years. And we've been doing a lot of different things. I mean, we've been quite involved. We've been involved in the church is the one thing that we've been involved in. We've been involved in our business opportunities. So we have with a former teammate of mine, Wes Jarvis, who I played with in Washington, and then Dave McCullough, who's a longtime friend of mine for the last 40 years and also a business partner, former teammate of mine on playing midget hockey in Barrie. And then we have another partner in Richmond Hill. Rick Hornacka used to be a junior Team Canada coach and longtime coach and teacher. And we run the national training rinks in both Barrie, Newmarket, and Richmond Hill. So that takes up a little bit of time and energy. And then we have a few other different businesses that we have around town. So that certainly has been taking my time. I've sat on a few different boards, currently sit on the Hockey Hall of Fame Selection Committee and have for the last number of years. Served on the board of World Vision Canada for 9 years, which was an awesome experience, a wonderful organization. Sit on a couple of other different boards in an ongoing basis. So that takes a little bit of time. And then we are also grandparents, my wife of 39 years, Colleen and I, grandparents to 4 grandchildren, Austin, Harper, Emma, and Logan. And so that really spends a lot of time doing that. I got to tell you, Luke. So that's the fun part of what we do right now. And so that's kind of what we've been doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you. Because there's, so many ways that I know you're making a difference outside of hockey in people's lives and even just being a great grandfather to your grandkids. So that's pretty sweet. Mike, for you referenced this a minute ago in talking about a teammate you'd played minor hockey with in Barrie. But would love to hear what are some of your earliest memories of playing hockey and really what were some of the dynamics that made you fall in love with the sport to begin with?
Well, I started skating when I was 3 years old. My mom took me for figure skating lessons, which I didn't really like too much from what I recall, but I got into hockey skates pretty quickly. And I just always loved playing minor hockey. When I was playing minor hockey, I initially grew up in Mississauga until I was 13 years old and just kind of played minor hockey. I was always a good skater, always worked hard, but I was just like any of the other kids playing, really. And then we moved up to Barrie when I was 13 years old. And I like telling this story when I was playing AAA hockey in Mississauga in the MTHL at that time. It's the GTHL right now. And you know how competitive AAA hockey is, especially in the city. And so when we moved up to Barrie, my dad grew up in Barrie. His dad grew up in Barrie. And I think he always wanted to get back there. So when he came home one day and said, hey, to the family, hey, we're moving up to Barrie, we all kind of looked at him like, but why are we moving up to Barrie? And I said, Dad, where am I going to play hockey? And he said, well, you'll play in Barrie. And I said, yeah, but Barrie's only a AA center. I've been playing AAA hockey. He said, that's okay. You'll get lots of ice time. And that's exactly how he approached it. And I came up and I did get lots of ice time and made some great friends
Mm.
and have some great hockey memories from playing minor hockey. I played on the 1974 Barrie Co-op midget team.
Mm.
We won the national championship that year
Wow.
with for a small town back then of about 25,000 people in Barrie. That was a big deal, and
Yeah.
and so those are great early memories that I have, and then just playing hockey in Barrie, and then going off to play junior hockey in Niagara Falls, and eventually getting into pro hockey. Those are kind of my early childhood memories from the first time I stepped on the ice when I was 5 years old in Mississauga, and realized after I fell 3 times that I still have my skate cards on, to winning the national championship in midget hockey, and then making it to the NHL. Those were just steps along the way, and I always loved playing the game. And
Mm.
even as a pro, I liked watching the game,
Mm.
but not as much as I liked playing it. And so I
Mm.
could kind of go into a hotel room, and we're on the road, and my roommate would be watching the hockey game, some other hockey game, and I'd be saying, can we do something else? I just, I don't really want to watch it as much as I want to play it.
Yeah.
And so that's in my earliest memories. It was just the idea of wanting to play the game.
Yeah, man. And I mean, I've only just played fun pickup hockey on the side, but I know there's something beautiful, especially in the middle of winter. You step out on, especially an outdoor rink, just get your skates on and a stick, and you're just like ripping around. There's something just beautiful and freeing about that. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's like it's one of those intangibles, one of those beautiful things in life that
No, no doubt, no
you
doubt.
can't exactly even perfectly describe. But hey, I love going from taking your skate guards off as a little kid right up through to pro hockey. There's a story there for perseverance for sure. Mike, I know you and I have talked a little bit, and there was really a formative season for you as you were preparing to, or actually had already kind of started into your pro hockey career as a young adult, and would love to hear the circumstances that kind of surrounded you discovering a personal relationship with Jesus Christ as a young adult, and how that continued to shape your life personally and also your professional career.
It really was. I think I was drafted by the Washington Capitals in 1979 and played there. Had a great rookie year, my first year, and scored 36 goals and was the rookie of the year on our team when they used to give out individual trophies on each team. And things were going very well. And then that next summer, I remember a guy was traded to our team, John Pronovo. And I remember some of the guys saying, as we were getting ready for training camp, he's one of those born again Christian guys. You better keep an eye out for him. And I thought, I'm not quite sure what that means. Hadn't really even heard that before. So I kept an eye out for John. And so John and I actually became pretty good friends early on because I'm a right winger and he was the right winger that had a tremendous amount of experience in the NHL and scored 50 goals. And, he was a very accomplished player. And so we got to be actually pretty good friends. And John, he would ask if I wanted to go to a Bible study at his house, and I'd say, I don't know, what do you do at a Bible study? He says, well, we simply open up the Bible and we take a look and see what it has to say about life and where we're at and everything else. And he said, and by the way, my wife Deanne is going to be making dinner. And I said, okay, I'm in. I'm a young guy, need a free dinner. It's time to go. And so I went, as well as a few of my teammates went, and week after week we went to this Bible study, and I started to realize that that all the things that I had been taught, it's not that they were incorrect, but they were missing one thing. They talked a lot in our Bible studies about a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And I had been raised in a great home, a wonderful, loving family, 4 great sisters, and my mother and father, and we went to church, not regularly, but maybe in the younger years we did, but then that got a little bit less and less. But, I had a real solid foundation kind of at least the idea of Jesus Christ and God, but it had never been put in the form of a personal relationship. And the more I went to these Bible studies, the more I found that they were talking about a personal relationship. And I realized that I didn't have that. And everything was going great in my life and my career at that time. So I've heard a lot of testimonies over the course of time, and people, how God reached down, I mean, in the depths of their despair and rescued them. And that seems to be more the norm. For me, it was just the opposite. He kind of rescued me in the height of success.
Wow.
And I wasn't looking for anything. Nothing was wrong with my life. I was engaged to be married at that time. And I started to see what was in the scriptures and see the fact that I was separated from God because of the sin that I was born with and continued to do, and that the only way I was going to be rescued from that was to have a personal relationship with Christ. That was the plan of salvation that we have heard about. And what it was for me is that the evidence was overwhelming, and I had to do something with that. Either I had to accept it, or I had to just say, okay, that's what it is, and just kind of move on. And for me, it was something that the evidence was so overwhelming that I accepted it. And I said, okay, Lord, I said, I'm on board. And I remember I was engaged at the time, and I came home to my fiance and said, I've been going to these Bible studies and, talking to you a little bit about it. Well, I've made this decision and to become a Christian and to give my life over to the Lord and kind of follow the ways that I think are the proper way to conduct your life and allow the Lord to kind of lead me. And thinking that she would be pretty excited, and she was not.
Okay.
Excited. And so things started to kind of go poorly with us, and she wanted to kind of call the wedding off. We were supposed to be married that summer. And so I said, well, why don't you come to these Bible studies with me and start to hear what I'm hearing. And so she did. She started to come to the studies. She started to become good friends with John Pronovo's wife, Deanne. And we started to go to these studies together. And, it was a huge concern for me, because here I am, I did what I think was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And yet my relationship with my fiance was on rocky ground.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I was quite concerned about was my hockey career, because once again, everything was going great. So I'm thinking to myself, am I going to upset the balance that has been created here? Am I going to lose some kind of focus? Am I going to lose some kind of edge by making this decision? And what I found, and then the other thing that happened around the same time too, was I had a really serious eye injury where I got hit in the eye with a puck. And I had lost the vision in my eye for about a week and a half, and it started to come back. And I was out playing, or I was not playing. I was out, and all this is happening at the same time. And I'm saying, Lord, I don't kind of get this. I mean, it was all going really good, and then I make this decision, and now things are kind of taking a little bit of a turn.
Yeah.
And so I either had to kind of embrace my newfound faith, or I just had to, I maybe had to just, cut my losses and get out of this.
Yeah.
And I decided to just take an approach that I believed everything the same way that I believed it before, when things were good, and things now are going a little sideways on me. And so I just took my newfound faith and said, Lord, listen, I'm committed to you. It's in your hands. If you want me to recover from this eye injury, if you want me to keep playing hockey, if I'm going to be married to this girl, it's in your hands. And so I did. I just simply put it all in the Lord's hands. And it is amazing how looking back on it, especially how it all worked out for me. My eye injury started to get better. I started playing again. I couldn't see very well for a few months, but it started to kind of turn. My hockey career, took off, and I found that the edge that I thought that I would be missing, I actually felt like I had more of an edge, because I felt a real sense of responsibility, not only to my teammates and to my family and to, the people watching, to the fans, but also to God, because I felt like He had given me this ability and He put me in this position, and I felt a strong sense of responsibility.
Mm.
And then I came home one day and my wife told me that, or my fiance told me that she had made the same commitment that I had
Wow.
made. And so Colleen and I were married that summer, and we've been married now for 39 years.
Awesome.
And so, it's amazing how God takes care of things, and
Mm.
it all worked out for me. And yet other times it doesn't necessarily work out, but the idea of trusting that God has a plan for you and is in control of your life,
Mm.
whether you know it or not.
Yeah.
He is in control of your life.
Yeah. Wow. That's
Just
so
picking up on
significant.
that, I'm gonna jump in on a question for you.
Yeah.
So, and I've told this story before to my good friend Rick Buck, and he likes this story because it's accurate. So I
Yeah.
talk about control.
Mm.
So I'm thinking it was about 10 years ago. I got an opportunity to go out to Cold Lake, Alberta, and
Mm.
I was playing in a charity hockey game out there.
Mm.
And they asked me if I had any interest in going up in an F-18. And I said,
Wow.
"Are you kidding me? I would love to." So they
Yeah.
had a training aircraft on an F-18 where a regular F-18 just has one seat, but the training aircraft has two seats, one in front of the other. And so I had to go through a whole day's worth of preparation on how to breathe properly, all of the different things that you needed to find out about going into this aircraft, even as just a passenger on the aircraft.
Yeah.
And most of the time we spent on how to eject, and that
Oh.
was not a good thing. But we did need to know that. So sure enough, the time comes around, and I go up into this F-18, and we take off, and we had seemed like straight up into the air,
Mm.
and then the pilot cuts the engines, and then we start falling backwards, and then he starts them back up again, and we do this for like 40 minutes. We're going and doing all these maneuvers and pulled 6.8 Gs and all that kind of stuff. It was
Wow.
so cool. Well, we were flying at the one time, and he said, "Do you want to take control of the aircraft?" And I said, "Yeah, I would love to." And so he allowed me. He says, "You're in control of the aircraft." Of course, I'm not in control of the aircraft. He is, but I'm now have the stick, and
Yeah.
where I'm moving, the aircraft is moving. And he
Yeah.
says, "Go ahead and do what you want." So I'm diving and everything else, and red lights are kind of lighting up the board, and I hear all these buzzers and all the bells are ringing and everything. And I do that for just a couple of minutes, and he takes control of the aircraft again and levels it out, and we finally land, and we get out of the plane. I'm just exhausted. I'm
Mm.
soaked because of the adrenaline, I guess, that's going
Yeah.
on. And so I tell the story that at that time that I was flying the aircraft,
Mm.
and uh, I look back and I really wasn't flying the aircraft. If I did not have a skilled pilot that
Yeah.
had real control of the aircraft, and all the bad maneuvers that I made, that we were going into stalls and everything else that he was able to correct, that he was really in control of the aircraft. I thought I was, but I knew
Yeah.
that he was. And isn't that so in our lives? Is
Mm.
thinking a lot of times that we are in control when
Mm.
actually God is in full control. And knowing that He is in control as a Christian just gives you that peace of mind in knowing that even as you kind of go along in life, and even as you make mistakes, if you have that personal relationship with God, that knowing that He is in control
Mm.
and He is the ultimate pilot of your life.
That's an awesome illustration. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you. Yeah, that's a very powerful illustration. I'm thrilled
And
you
it
had
was
that
cool flying.
opportunity. That's a rare opportunity, but it sounds
It was a
exhilarating.
rare opportunity. I was very fortunate. Yes.
Oh, right on. Mike, I was digging into the stat book a little bit and reading a bit about your career, and read, you had over 1,000 points, 1,000 games played, also 1,000 penalty minutes, which I'll just say I
Yes.
love, because I think it's good. Like, well, it's good for Christians to be competitive. I like that. But you're also considered, voted one of the 100 best hockey players of all time, and you've played with, Messier, you've played with Lemieux, you played with Gretzky, whether in the league or in international tournament competition. And so I wonder, in the midst of that kind of success, what does humility look like? How did you keep a level head in the midst of all that? And maybe even today, there might be some current players you could point to and say, I value their humility, their example on the ice and off of it.
Well, I think it was and is just a matter of, as an athlete, you have to have confidence. If you
Mm.
don't have confidence, you're in trouble. Um, but I never thought that that was in opposition of having a humble spirit. I thought
Mm.
that they were perfectly compatible. And
Yeah.
I think it's knowing, I mean, I believe it was C.S. Lewis who said that humility isn't thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less.
Mm.
And I think that that is probably how I would look at how I approach, everything that I do, is just in that way. And knowing that just because you happen to be really good at one thing at a sport doesn't make you any better than anybody else. It might
Mm.
make you better at that sport
Mm.
in a particular time, but as a person, it doesn't make you any better. Everybody is equal in God's eyes, and I think just kind of continually doing that, and it success can cloud you a little bit too, though. Like,
Mm.
and I think it's always a check and balance that you always have to check back in. And I don't mean like on a sort of regular basis. I mean on a daily basis.
Mm.
And you have to make sure that if you stay close to God, then you will stay in check
Mm.
for sure.
Mm.
If you drift away from your relationship with God, then things can go a little wobbly for you too. And because those types of things you have in your control, circumstances you don't have in your control, as you know, things happen,
Mm.
and some things are tough, very difficult things for people to deal with, for families to deal with, for individuals to deal with. You have no control over those things, but some things you do have control over, and you always have control over how you react to situations, your attitude, um, and how you view yourself and others. And I think that if you stay close to God through reading, through relationships, then I think you have a better chance of making the right decisions.
Mm. Yeah, well said. Well said. And aside, just for young people who are loving playing hockey and stuff today, any role models you would say, like this person's work ethic or this person's example, that you would celebrate in the league?
Yeah, I mean, there's a guy that retired a few years ago, Shane Doan, who was a friend of mine. I
Mm.
played with Shane when he was a very young player
In
in
Phoenix.
Arizona,
Yeah.
and then when he retired a few years ago, I mean, he was a great role model, just
Yeah.
as a person, and as a player, and how he played, and
Mm.
he was a gritty player. He was a tough player, but he was also a classy player as well.
Yeah.
And then I look at somebody like Sidney Crosby. I mean, it's pretty
Mm.
tough to not like Sidney Crosby and how he plays the game, how he
Yeah.
conducts himself both on and off the ice.
Mm.
He would be someone that I would certainly recommend young people look up to as well.
Mm. Mm. Well said. Yeah, I loved watching Shane Doan back in the day. You're right. Great combination of skill and discipline and grit, and yeah, an excellent player. Um, Mike, I want to consider, sports and your experience in sports, but also through the lens of a lot of the up and coming athletes we have today. Yeah, young people who are passionate about sports, but also trying to find their way in the midst of the sporting culture. And I know that for a lot of young people who are playing sports, amateur athletes, there's a lot of pressure not only to compete at a certain level, but also sometimes to embrace a lifestyle that can be marked by extravagance or reckless choices, or even just wild living. And I wonder, for you, in your experience, how have you navigated those pressures through your career, and what might be some of your advice to young people who are playing and competing at a really high level, but also facing the decisions of what it means to follow Jesus, even when that might look different from their teammates or what culture expects of them as an athlete?
Yeah, good observations, Luke. And it is tough, and I think it's actually maybe more difficult now for athletes, young athletes, than it was when I was a young athlete.
Hmm.
Just because there's more money out there, there's more at stake, there are more distractions. Um, your your every move can be on social media, either
Hmm.
by you or by somebody else. You have to be very careful. I feel for some of the young athletes that they can't let their guard down
Hmm.
anywhere,
Hmm.
and that's got to be a little difficult, especially somebody like me. I like my privacy a little bit, and it's difficult to attain that
Hmm.
now with social media and all the things that they go with. But I think it's important to, and this is very difficult to do for a young athlete, but something that they're going to have to deal with at some point in their life, and that is separating who they are as an athlete and who they are as a person. Because that's not just in athletics, it's in a lot of things, really. And different career paths that people might have. I think it's easy to say I am Mike Gartner, the hockey player, instead of Mike Gartner, the community person, the grandfather, the father, the husband, the church leader, whatever it might be. What you do isn't who you are; it's just part of who you are. And I think that the balance is trying to make sure that you make decisions that are based on who you are as a person. Now, when you're in a team environment, for instance, and you are a young Christian, you're going to have to make some tough decisions along the way. It doesn't mean that you completely separate yourself from everybody else, because you can't, and nor should you. You should be part of the team. You should do things that the team does, but you have to know when it's time to not do that, and when it's time for you to go home. And those are I had those decisions throughout my career, and you try to make those decisions, and sometimes you get ridiculed for them, and sometimes you don't. Sometimes your teammates respect you for making those decisions. But you have to be real in who you are, because I can tell you right now, if you say that you're a Christian and you go out and you do all the things that that you should not be doing, then your non-Christian teammates are not going to have any respect for you at all, nor should they, because you're not living up to what you say you are. So you need to be true to who you are, and yet you need to be the best teammate that you can be, and and it's a balance, and you have to find where that balance is.
Wow. But I value that. I've heard the analogy said, scripturally people quote, be in the world, but not of it. And the example given of a ship on a sea, and how the ship is at its best when it's on the sea. That's what it's like made for. But it's at its worst when it's full of the sea and thus sunk on the bottom of the sea, So like that, like you said, that balance of your present, like God made you to be a good athlete, to excel, to be a good teammate, to be invested, to compete well. But realizing what it is, to navigate that balance of being a good teammate, being a good competitor, but representing Christ. So thank you for sharing from your own experience in that. Kind of building off that, Mike, a lot of people in our culture, especially young athletes, they see professional sports kind of as an end in itself. Once you sign that first contract, once you get drafted, like you've arrived. Like it's kind of the be all and end all in a lot of people's mind. But when you think about how faith has shaped your sense of purpose and success, how has that influenced how you've responded to that kind of mentality within our culture?
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with success. I mean, I think that I think it's a valuable attribute to have, and it's something that, as an athlete, if you're not striving for success, you're going to have trouble in succeeding in trying to be the best athlete that you can be. And so, once again, it's the balance that is important, in my opinion, because you do want to strive for success, and I still do. And but it's not an end unto itself. It's just, I always look at it as just part of having fun. Like, it's just part of the process. Like, we should try to do it. So if I look at things as competitive all the time, it's not because, everything has to be competitive. It's just kind of, it makes it enjoyable. Like, and it's not to make more money. It's not to keep score or anything. It's just that, aren't we supposed to do the best with what we're given all the time? And I just kind of look at it that way. And I think that it should not be an end unto itself. It should just be part of an extension of who you are as a person.
Yeah. Well said. That combination of ambition and great place.
And sometimes we talk about ambition as a bad word in the Christian circles, and I don't think it is. I think that it just needs to be moderated in why you're doing it. There's nothing wrong being ambitious, but why are you being ambitious? Are you being ambitious because you want to make as much money as you can to buy the biggest house you can, to et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Probably maybe not as healthy to do it that way. But if it's just because I want to be, I'm given this opportunity, I just want to be the best that I can be right now.
Yeah.
And that's how it should be.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah. No, I resonate with that, Mike. I remember being on a sports ministry trip for soccer in Brazil back in 2011, and the coach leading the sports ministry trip. So like a Christian venture, you're using the vehicle of soccer to connect with local people and ultimately share about who Jesus is in your life. And I remember him saying again and again and again, like, play your guts out. Do not lose. Do everything you can to not lose a single game. Because if you're really nice, but if you suck on the soccer field, no one's going to respect what you have to say about Jesus. So be ambitious to be excellent as soccer players. And that'll pave the way for people to respect what you have to say about following Jesus Christ. So yeah,
good advice.
Ambition is huge. When you think about influence, Mike, because obviously for sports, it has a prominent place in our culture. How have you used your influence as a hockey player to impact other people? But also, how would you encourage young people to use the influence they have, whether it's just playing at their local high school, playing maybe at the collegiate or university level or beyond, as a platform to impact other people's lives?
Well, I think that therein lies the positive thing, is we do have a platform because sports is held in high regard in our society. And so I think that if you use it as a very positive platform, then that's how it will be viewed. And it's like being a role model. And I always looked at it when they said, how do you feel about being a role model? My answer would always be, well, I actually don't have a choice. I am. My choice is whether I'm going to be a good role model or a bad role model, because I am by default in that position. And so I think having the ability to utilize that platform can be a very, very positive thing, and would encourage anybody that is in that position to do that in a positive way. Yeah. And I know that I have tried to utilize the position that I have, but to help build a community, whether it be the church community, whether it be the community that I live in in the greater good of our area, and trying to help young people, try to build positive, put positive strokes, kind of brush strokes into people's lives to help build them up in that way.
Yeah, awesome. It's yeah, that's an advantage point I'd never thought about when you said I have no choice but to be a role model, but to figure out what kind of role model I'm going to be. That's significant. But thank you for the many ways that you've been proactive in that. Mike, we're kind of landing the plane on our time together, but just a few more questions for you. And I'm thinking of those who are listening in who aren't really into sports or haven't really played at a high competitive level. But as we talked about a minute ago, they really do want to excel in what they're passionate about. And so when you think of your career and some of the values that allowed you to excel as an athlete that translate into really every other area of life, what would be some of the things you'd really encourage people to apply to their pursuit of excellence?
Well, I look at it, I think of, different sacrifices that are made along the way, learning determination, learning that, that you lose, and how do you respond to losing? Because no one wins all the time. And so can you fail forward, and what can you do to, to kind of learn from all the things that you're going through, from adversity? Those are all very positive attributes that I have gained from being in sports my whole life. My kids have. And I think that those are positive things that you can gain through sports in general. I remember reading a sports psychology book when I was a young pro, and they said that, I thought this was pretty cool. They said, what sports teach you is that that you can have a passion for something that actually means very little. So in other words, it allows you to practice your passion, because it is just a sport, right? It is just a game. And it's important, and that's what I did for a living. So I always looked at it like it was important, but in kind of the bigger picture, it is a game.
Yeah.
But what it did is it allowed me to practice passion, because, how can you do that on a daily basis? It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. Mike, for people who'd love to maybe learn more about you or learn more about some of the initiatives you're a part of, what are some of the ways that they can learn more?
Well, they could watch this podcast, because that's about the only place that they're actually going to see anything, Luke, is simply I'm not on any kind of social media. I've decided not to do that years ago, and don't
Fair.
regret my decision at all.
Mm.
And so every now and then you might catch a Facebook something, a post or something from my wife or my daughter, or my other kids, but I'm certainly not out there. So you'd have to dig a little bit deeper. And
No
as you
worries.
can tell, I've been outside a lot. So during the whole COVID period, we have a little bit of property here, and so there's always lots to do outside. So I've been outside a lot. So
Yeah.
learn how to get a good suntan. I'm not so sure. That's about it.
No worries. I respect that though. That's totally valid, man. Well, thank you, Mike. I'm really grateful that you made this time for this conversation and really appreciate all you've shared.
Thanks, Luke.
Awesome. Thank you.